Have you built a lot of systems and processes in your business that don't rely on key team members?
We have. I think we've been lucky. Development of AI, a lot of computer systems take care of a few things. I think we're very much a personable practice.
So sometimes it's about doing things differently and just blocking the noise out, which I think you've done. What have you learned about yourself on this journey?
A lot. The last 5 years, probably as a personal transformation, mental, psychological, emotional, has been the biggest change, I think, for me. No one teaches you how to handle staff. HR is probably one of the biggest things that you have to deal with from day one when you become a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, and nobody sets you up for that.
So now when I see red flags, I'm acting on it a lot quicker. Before, I wouldn't fire people that I know need to go just because I felt sorry for them. What impact has that transformation, feeling good, looking good, had on the way you show up?
The biggest change, I think, for me was just mental clarity. And it's crazy how just being fit and healthy, what it does to the mind.
Khilan Shah, welcome to Successful. Absolute pleasure having you here today.
Thank you, Shaz.
Founder of the infamous Hampstead Dental Studio. We've known each other 6 years now.
Yeah,
Is that pretty effective?
Yeah, coming up to 6 years. I think we started working with you as soon as from the get-go, even actually before I completed on the practice. So.
I'm super excited for this conversation. One, because I've seen your growth from even purchasing the practice to now building a practice that is spoken about in London, to you then acquiring the site next door. And you've done it quite silently. There's been no fanfare online. It just seems like you've been making the right moves and you've done it with calmness. So I want to learn from you today, and I want our listeners to take something away about practice ownership, going into practice ownership, juggling life, what have been the challenges, so that kind of thing.
Brilliant, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
What should we start with?
So tell us, what made you want to buy a practice?
A couple of things, a few things. I think I've always had this like sort of entrepreneur spirit in me. And being a dentist, like day to day, it's great. You know, you get the patient interaction and you get to treat people, put them out of pain, put them out of misery, give them a perfect smile, which is very, very satisfying. But that little itch in me always, I always wanted to do something business related, whether it was dentistry or whether it was something else. Obviously, as I started working, so I was working in mixed practice for a good maybe 6 years before I took over here. But I was working in initially predominantly NHS practice, and then the natural progression, as most dentists do, is you start doing a bit more private and start enjoying the dentistry a bit more. But I got to a point where the practices I was working in, and I worked in one practice for I think it was about 5 years, and that made me realize the importance of patient journey and the patient experience. A lot of this sort of customer experience and hospitality that we talk about. And it was a lack of that in that practice. And I was seeing it in quite a few other practices that made me just think, you know what, if we just did this one thing, or if we just introduced this, a nicer waiting room or a nicer smell and, the smaller things, I was like, this could really enhance that patient experience. The dentistry we're going to deliver. And there's lots of great dentists out there, maybe not working in the right environment. So that was one of the biggest driving forces initially. I was like, we can, if I did something myself and I set it up myself how I wanted it, we could really deliver on that patient experience, obviously deliver on the treatment at the end, but the patient experience and that journey just being second to none.
Is that because something was missing in the practices you worked at? Is that what inspired you?
Yeah, I think most dentists and maybe even patients and people will relate to this. Majority of traditional dental practices is, you go in, you have your reception desk, you're greeted, not always greeted. You're sort of just kind of acknowledged by the receptionist.
Yeah, a little grunt.
Yeah, you're told to sort of wait in the waiting room, and there might be a few magazines there for you to read. Dentist is running late, maybe 15, 20 minutes. There's no communication on that side of thing. And just the whole sort of feeling when you come into a practice, being treated and then leaving. I think the practice I worked in, the practice I saw and been in, there was nothing special about that whole experience. It was very much like either a transaction, or you're going in just for the treatment and coming back out, and you're not left with anything more than that. Which is fine. Which some practices are set up just to be that, and some patients just want that. But that was one of the main kind of driving forces for me to create my own brand, create my own experience, and do something special for the patient.
You've got quite iconic premises in Hampstead Garden suburb. And I know it was a bank before because we worked with that practice prior to your ownership. And like maybe less than half a mile away, one of the most expensive roads in the country, Bishop's Avenue. Do you get patients from there?
I don't think anyone actually does that. The one most expensive houses I've ever, I think, might have a housekeeper that sometimes pops in.
Were there any fears around going in so deep with, a practice like that?
Yeah, so I had a big transition. I went from mixed practice associate to private principal,
Yeah.
and literally overnight. So I had never worked in a sole private practice before.
Oh,
So majority of my dentistry was towards the end. I was doing a lot more private compared to NHS, but the practices were still very much your traditional mixed practice. So that transition was quite a big jump. And I had a bit of an imposter syndrome. Probably still do. I don't think it ever goes away. But I felt, when I took over, I was like, God, these boots are big, like to fill. And, one, the type of practice being private, but like you said, the location and type of patients. But to be honest, I think we just went with it, and
yeah.
I knew deep down clinically, I knew I had the skills. Um, how building the right team, that was one of the most important things, and it still is. You can never do it alone. So you need the right people around you, everyone with the same vision, the same mindset, everyone
Yeah.
wanting to deliver on that patient experience.
So on that point, I want to say, so you've acquired the premises next door and you had a launch party. And, naturally, I've seen a lot of events and I've seen a lot of team members around their principal. But there was something about that event which didn't feel like their staff. They all, when you're sharing the story, I was looking around, observing, your team's eyes had lit up. I don't know what you've done, but you could see they adore you. Your family was there. It felt like everyone is family. I know it sounds cliche, but there's a genuine draw towards you, and everyone wants you to win. And I think you've built something. I definitely want to delve into this, but that was the feeling I took away from that evening.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing. I talk about building a team, but you got to have a leader who's got a vision, and obviously naturally that's me.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that energy, you have that passion, which I bring. I bring that day to day. There's never a day I don't bring that. Doesn't matter what's going on.
Yeah.
Might not have slept all night. When I come in, to that practice, I've always got that passion and energy. And I think the moment you have that, and you have the right people around you, you attract the right kind of people. Um, you mentioned obviously the team, and naturally, as any business, we'll go through changes. Even some of the people you would have seen at that relaunch party, they're not with us anymore. But it's about having the right people constantly around you, the right energy, the right passion, the right vision. It's hard to instill. It's not something you can teach
Yeah.
anyone. Things have to come from within. But I think one, I don't know if you can call it a skill, or maybe something I've got. I've got this almost power where I can bring that out in people. And if
Yeah.
it's there, if I see a spark, and that's one of my, when I recruit, that's what I look for. I don't look at a CV. I don't look at anyone's experience. I look for something different or something special, or something, that person can bring to the team, to what we're trying to do here. And it's never anything to do with academics or, what's written on paper. And I think, yeah, just harnessing that and that energy, that's how we've sort of built our team
Yeah.
at HDS. That's how we attract the right kind of people to join the team and stay within the team as well.
I want to be honest with you. When you first called me and said that I'm buying that practice, I'd spent time at that practice before because the person buying it prior to you, he was converting it from a bank to the dental practice you have now. So he was actually removing the safe, and he had called me on site. And because it was local, with us being in Marylebone, I went and visited, and he shared his plans, and it was stunning. The signage, etc., the branding we did for it. But I know, even though he went in with that full passion of, like, this is my baby, he wasn't too successful. So when you said, look, I'm going to buy this and I've got this plan, and you sounded super ambitious, there was still a part of me thinking, someone prior to you came with that same vision. How far are you going to be able to take this? So in recent years, when I've seen your rise, and then with the extension that you did and how it felt when I arrived, and the reputation that you've got and your visibility, I was so proud of you, because it to do that, to take a practice that's quite new, someone's putting all the effort prior to you and they've not been successful, for you to turn that around, there must have been some things that you did which aren't textbook. You can't just open up a practice and for it to run and just be on autopilot. So that's why I want to get into, like, what were those moments for you? What were the turning points that made the business successful?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I took over just turn of lockdown, so September 20, so the back of first lockdown, but still very much in that COVID environment. We had fallow times and we had all the PPE. I think in that first year or maybe first 6 months, I was new practice owner, seeing new patients for the first time. Because of the big masks and everything we had to wear, the patients hadn't seen my face and they wouldn't have recognized me. And it was only until a year later where everything came off and, all the restrictions started easing, I could start creating that sort of personal connection with the patients. So it was a difficult period to take over, but actually, and you speak to a lot of, especially private practice owners in that period, there was this whole post-COVID boom in clear aligners, cosmetic treatment. So that really, and that's something we planned, but that really helped sort of the initial growth phase. And that happened from day one. Since I took over, we had patients calling up wanting Invisalign, wanting clear aligners, implants, whatever it was, or coming to see the dentist for whatever reason, whether it be they had more disposable income, they weren't spending on holidays and etc. So I think part of that, I say it's luck that wasn't planned. We just had a bigger influx of
So
patients.
your signage is very clear about what you do.
Yeah.
So it's not just lucky. I mean, it was positioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the branding, awareness, that's all very strategic, and, directing the patient and them knowing the type of practice we weren't going for, mediocre, average. It was luxury. It was high end. We purposely went in at that level. But then you also attract that kind of patient as well, which was great. And initially, it was just me. It was me. There was one nurse, and I had an old practice manager. There was just three of us. That's what it started off as. As the team grew, we got the right people in. We started employing TCOs and putting the systems, processes in. So the first year was really about putting the right systems, processes, changing what wasn't working with the previous practice, and internally just making sure we were operating. Because we talk about delivering patient experience and journey, that can only happen when things are working internally. If things are all a mess internally, you can be as pleasant and nice to the patient when they come in, but if the things aren't working, and,
Yeah.
the flow isn't there, it just breaks down. So the first year was really much about building the team, working on all the small elements, building the culture. That was one of the biggest things. And then a lot of decisions I make, I'll be honest, a lot of them are calculated. I'll always think about things and weigh things up, but I very much go with my gut. A lot of decisions I made, I've gone with my gut, including even taking over. So everyone I did speak to before purchasing the practice said, "Don't do it." And very similar to what you said, you worked with the previous owner. Yeah, I knew he hadn't been successful. That had maybe failed at certain points for whatever reason. And even when you looked at the figures and you looked at the previous accounts and whatever, I think I went through with my accountant and he was like, okay, on paper, this doesn't really sound like a great idea. But I saw something when I first went to see that practice in one location, what I could do with it. I accepted, look, where it is right now, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
And in my head, I knew I wasn't purchasing that. I was purchasing what was possible and where we could take it.
I think that's the secret that most successful entrepreneurs share, being able to see something that no one else is able to see. Like my accountant says to me, you're the worst, most successful businessman I ever known.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean by that? He said, look, you don't charge for so many things you could be charging for, yet you're doing better than most of the media agencies that I support. So sometimes it's about doing things differently and just blocking the noise out, which I think you've done.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself on this journey?
A lot. The last 5 years, probably as a personal transformation, mental, psychological, emotional, has been the biggest change, I think, for me. No one teaches you how to handle staff, HR. HR is probably one of the biggest things that you have to deal with from day one when you become a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. And nobody sets you up for that. And dealing with people, we can deal with patients all day long. We know how to deal with different types of patients. That in itself is difficult. But when you're dealing with different types of employees, their own personal problems,
Yeah.
their own, reason for being in, and trying to manage that. That's probably the hardest, or probably the most difficult learning curve. I'll be honest, I'll put my hands up, and I didn't deal with staff that well to begin with. Whether it was hiring or firing or whatever had to be done. That's probably the biggest learning curve I've had over the last 5 years, and still learning.
Yeah.
Still learning to this day. If you speak to my practice manager, Louise, who's been with me now nearly 4.5 years, and the first thing she'll say is how much I've changed just in terms of dealing with people.
Yeah.
And that's something you learn. I think that's something you learn with different experiences and different circumstances. But it's been fun at the same time.
I feel I can relate to that. I think most practice owners share this as well, that it's the hardest thing to do. Now, you pick up a book about how to be a great manager or a great founder, and they're all saying treat your employees really well. If they're working just for money, you're not doing something right. They've got to feel part of the family, all of that stuff. And then you go and implement it. And I found that you take that route, and with 10 people, it's going to work with 6 of them, and the other 4 might take a lot of advantage. That it just can be very difficult, and then you become someone else. You become someone who you might not want to be. So now when I see red flags, I'm acting on it a lot quicker. Before, I wouldn't fire people that I know need to go just because I felt sorry for them, that where are they going to go after that? But when the tables are reversed, let's just say they found a job, they're not even working their notice. So that's when I realized that actually I just need to move quickly when it comes to hiring and firing and promoting.
Yeah.
If you see something's not right, don't let it linger. And have you experienced anything like that?
Exactly that. We've had team members that sometimes people outgrow the business, or the business outgrows them, whatever, vice versa. And I think it's recognizing that. And you say that 6-4 sort of out of 10 employees, it's recognizing those 4 that are not on board or not there for the right reason. And the quicker you recognize that, and the quicker you deal with it, whether it's, I don't know, trying to change your tact and, motivate them in a different way, or whether realizing actually, you know what, they're not right for the business, and off you go. Because one bad rotten apple, the longer they stay in there, it just then spreads, and toxic environments, attitudes, whatever. Even in someone with the right attitude, the right, aspiration, or whatever it is, if there's somebody around them with that negative attitude or negative energy, it can quite quickly spread. And I've seen that happen, firsthand. One thing you said interestingly is in terms of acting fast and quick. One thing I've learned, and sometimes we can't do it, and especially in small businesses, but it's hiring slow. So a lot of the time we'll hire reactive. Someone leaves, okay, we gotta get someone in straight away. And sometimes you just have to, because you need that position to be filled. But if you do have the luxury and you can do it, I think hiring slow is one thing I've learned, because we were at a point, I think it was about a year ago, we needed to fill 2 positions almost within 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And the first CV that came through, we're like, yeah, come, let's get them in. In the end, ended up losing both of whoever we hired within 2 weeks to do the we went through the whole probation period, the effort, all the energy it takes to hire somebody. And in the end, if they're not right for business, they're gone within a week or 2, and it's just a waste of time. So one thing, hiring slow, taking your time, finding the right people that fit your mold, fit your model. For some people, it works out. Everyone sometimes has their own journey. You accept that. I've had people come and go for the right reasons. And, we've had team members, especially in the last sort of year or so, who have moved on, but I'm proud to see them move on, because they've got on to that next step in their journey. And it's great. I had an associate who was with me for about 3 years, and, she went on to practice ownership, which is great, because, you've given them that foundation and that grounding. And
then still keep in touch.
Still in touch, exactly. We've had a TCO and nurses last year who wanted to then move on to the next step. We couldn't offer that here, and they moved on and still in touch. So sometimes you can be proud, even if they're not part of it. You've done your bit in that journey. And
I found when that happens, they really work with you to make sure the replacement settled in. You've had ample notice. They care about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Panic hiring, this is a topic that's really something that we should put a spotlight on, because I've done it. I remember when my daughter Helena was getting bored, something happened. I had to let someone go. It was gross misconduct. And I had no one to answer the phones. So there's a brilliant app actually called Job Today. It works really well in London. So I put on there that I need someone to just answer the phones for a couple of weeks. And he ended up staying in the business for about 3-4 years.
Wow.
And I'd only hired him to answer the phones, but he started to learn everything else. This was pre-COVID. So like, you're in a small environment, you're learning. And then the role he was in, it's not who I would hire for that role, but he kind of managed to work himself up.
Yeah.
And there was so many problems. And one of them was he was always late, like really always late. No matter what I put in place, he was always late. And the option was either keep someone who's got a lot of knowledge, but is always late, or fire. And I chose the former. And then once the clocks went back, right? So he's got an hour extra in bed and he was still late, right? And I think at that point, I was like, look,
That's it.
we've got a call. And even then I didn't let him go until I found he was doing something he shouldn't have. I was like, okay, now we have to let him go.
Right.
And it cost us like thousands through a solicitor's firm. I didn't know much about HR. So you learn about this. And the hardest thing, I guess, I get offered so many business opportunities. And most of the time I'm saying no, because people management is probably the hardest part of business ownership.
Yeah. So it's talked about, obviously, people talk about, if you talk to any, especially within dentistry, talk about, the struggles anyone's going through in a practice, even the most flourishing practice.
Yeah.
They say the biggest headache is HR and management. But there's a lot of stress you can take out of it, because coming back to what we were talking about earlier, if you are hiring the right people and you've got, as a leader, if you're putting the right vision there and everyone's there for the right reason, it doesn't mean everyone has to be part of that team, and people might come and go, as we said. But if you know the crop that you've got there are good, things kind of are a lot easier. But day to day, there's always things you have to. Yeah.
Have you built a lot of systems and processes in your business that don't rely on key team members?
We have, I think, obviously, we've been lucky. Development of AI and a lot of computer systems take care of a few things. I think we're very much a personable practice. So there's a lot we rely on human touch. I'm very much involved at every aspect of the business. It doesn't matter what's going on, and my team know it. They know Khilan's going to have an eye on this, or within a 5-10 minutes or something, maybe not going so right, he's going to turn on and he knows what's going on. So a lot of things are systemized and processes are there, so things work efficiently. But there is a fair still amount of just human checking and making sure things are right. But we've embraced quite a bit of AI and tech into the practice as well, which is helping sort of efficiencies.
Have you read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber?
I've listened to it.
You listened to
it? So this is one thing I can't. Not that I can't read, because even see I can.
I know what you're going to say.
But I can't concentrate. So if I've got a book, every holiday, and ask my wife this, she laughs, because I'll pack a book. She's like, you're not going to read it. You're not going to get past probably the first 3 or 4 pages. And I'll spend the whole week reading literally the same 2 or 3 pages. So actually, the last year or so, I've switched over. I've got the Audible account. I probably listen to about 3 or 4 audiobooks every month.
I struggle with this too. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things. When I wrote Instagram for dentists, I wrote it for people like me who can keep their attention. Yeah. It's not pages and pages of text. Yeah. But Michael Gerber,
probably the only book I've read. Really? Yeah.
So in E-Myth, Michael Gerber says, look, if you're building a solicitor's firm, you don't need the most experienced solicitors. You need good solicitors that can follow systems. So he says, build your business as if it were a franchise, even if you're not looking to franchise. And that point didn't make too much sense to me until I thought about my own business. So I would hire the best designers I could possibly find, that their work was just incredible. But I found that they very quickly outgrew the business because they're so ambitious as well, and they knew their work was good. So 1, 2, 3 years down the line, I'm back to square one when they leave, and it felt like I'm building from zero again. And this kept happening actually until I read that book, and then I changed my approach. I started hiring good designers that could design like me, because I'm a designer by profession. Yeah. So I've made systems, processes, how I think, because you say, oh, you can't replicate me. But there's so many parts. If you really think about it, there's an approach to the way we do things, what we say, how we plan. And that gave me immense growth. And so that book for me really stood out about systems and processes.
Yeah.
And it means that, I mean, even if we look at McDonald's, they could open up in a desert, plug and play.
Yeah.
So I feel like businesses like yours, there's probably so many systems and processes that you've not thought about it in that way, but you do have them.
Yeah.
So if you're opening HDS2, you could probably plug and play. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely scalability with a lot of what we do. People always ask me, actually, they're like, what's next? Is it HDS2? Is it another practice or whatever? I put, like, as I said earlier, I put 100% in, maybe 110% in every single day. And that's my passion. Everything's, around Hampstead Dental Studio and the practice as it is now. Well, if I went to number 2, would I be able to replicate exactly what we've done here? Maybe. So on the systems processes, how it operates, probably. But I think the biggest maybe asset, or maybe it's actually a disadvantage, is me and my involvement in the practice. And I think the moment, if we went to 2 or 3, that personal touch that we spoke about and how involved I am, I wouldn't be able to deliver that. So that 100% would then be 50-50, or if it was 3 of each, divided by 3. So I definitely agree with you. I think coming back to your point about, maybe not hiring the best. I mean, it depends on your business model. I mean, I always strive to try and hire the best, and whether it means they move on, that's fine, whatever, that's just their journey and where we are. But definitely linked to delegation. And I always think of this quote, I don't know where I read it or heard it, but it was, if you can find somebody that can do a task 80% as good as you're going to do it, is worth delegating. All right. Because it's not worth you putting the time in and effort, especially as an owner, CEO, whatever, got so many things that you have to look at. And I think that kind of, it kind of comes onto what you say. Like, if you can find somebody, they don't have to be the best. They don't have to do it the best. If they can do it to a good standard, that 80% level, you should be happy enough. The problem with my kind of personality is I kind of expect 100% when everything's done. And if it's 80%, I'll be like, oh, come on, what can we do to get the extra 20%? And then I end up spending an extra bit of time going back in to get it.
I think that is what stops founders from scaling. Not being able to let go of that bit. I got really frustrated because as the team started to grow, I'd come in because I love designing, but I couldn't design because every 2 minutes someone was asking me a question. So then I sought advice and they said, look, you're too helpful. They can come to you anytime and then you're going to solve their problem. Stop helping them. I said, I don't understand that. How can I stop helping them? He said, they've got their own brains. Ask them. So I started this new thing. I would say to them, when they would ask me a question, what would you do if I was dead? And then they tell me, I was like, go do that then. 9 out of 10 times, they would have the answer. To the point now, right, get asked very little. And now when I do get asked, they have to type it in somewhere and I check that thing twice a day. Because if I'm answering questions all day long, I'm not helping anyone. So these little hacks you find along the way that are business to business.
I think it's important as well because you're one, protecting your time. Like you said, a lot of those questions or whatever problems they have, they can probably solve by themselves. And the more you're going to help them, the less they're going to think. And you'll probably find, since you've done that, maybe your questions or inquiries are reducing as well because they're like, let's figure this out myself. Well, let's try and sort it out.
And either I've not trained them well enough, or they're just too reliant. So it's a culture shift as well. Now, when I think of you and what you've achieved, and there's 1 or 2 things that we've not spoken about, but I'm going to talk about it now. The word transformation comes to mind. So from you becoming a practice owner, transformation, what you did with the practice, transformation, phase 2 transformation, and even yourself, your fitness journey, I followed it on Instagram. You've had a huge transformation. Visually, you look different, and that must make you feel like a whole new person. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I feel like a different person, to be honest. It was much needed. I was, I've always enjoyed fitness. I've always been one of those. I always used to go to the gym, play a bit of sports. I've always been fairly active, but always struggled with weight. That's always been, I think, since my mid-20s, always struggled with always being a little bit overweight, whether it's, drinking too much or eating too much. Most of it's the diet, right? And I got to this point, I think it was not last year, when was it? 2024. I was like, I have to do something because I just didn't feel right. Not even in terms of my body. Yeah, maybe a bit body conscious, not being able to wear the clothes I want, etc. But more just mentally, I just didn't feel right. I was going 100 miles an hour with Hampstead Dental Studio, got the kids at home, kids growing up, lots going on, and I just felt like I wasn't keeping up. So I thought, what, I need to do something like drastic. Like I need to make a change. Um, and then there's a personal trainer. I don't know if you know him, but he's a dentist turned personal trainer now. His name's Rohan Verma. He's reaching out to me a little bit over Instagram, as these guys do. They kind of try and slide in their DMs and be like, "Hey, are you looking for a coach?" Or I'm looking to see. So we had a few conversations, how we were off, and I thought, you know what, let's just go with this, because I was a bit skeptical about online training, online coaching. I had a few PTs in the gym. That was fine. So when I was doing the PT in the gym, I would go and do my 45 minutes in the gym, and then probably grab a that Greg's on the way home, because I'd be like, I deserve it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like in it. I was doing workouts and doing all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't looking at the all around health. So yeah, I just zoned in and had someone I was really accountable to. Someone I created like a nice sort of personal relationship with. I think that was one of the biggest reasons for the transformation. But having that accountability just to sort out the diet, what was going in, understanding what's actually happening in your body. And I did it at a time where I thought, you know what, I still want to be healthy and fit. I want to be one of those when my kids are like in their teens and they look up to their dad and be like, "Look, let's go for a run, or let's go to the gym, let's go and play paddle together." And I really want to be that sort of dad when I'm in my 40s and 50s. And I thought, look, if I make the change now,
Yeah.
it's gonna put me in good stead for that. So yeah, just got my head down, zoned in. It's tough, like anything. Majority of it revolved around changing the diet drastically. A lot of sort of day-to-day mindset changes. Coming back to the audiobooks, and the reason why I started those is I just started walking a lot. I
Okay.
would go for maybe an hour and a half walk every single day.
10K steps
10K
plus.
steps plus.
Yeah.
Stick an audiobook in and just feeling great.
Yeah.
And now I'm almost 20 kilos lighter than I was about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Feeling great for it, feeling good mentally, physically, just everything. It's an absolute transformation as well.
What impact has that transformation, feeling good, looking good, had on the way you show up, build your personal brand, build a business? Tell me the direct correlation.
Yeah, I think, look, on the physical aspect, just confidence. When you feel good, when you're wearing clothes that fit well. I had to get a new wardrobe, right? When you lose that much weight, I had to literally get my whole new wardrobe, including scrubs and get a new set of figs and all the rest of it. But just feeling good in my clothes, feeling confident. That was it. But the biggest change, I think, for me was just mental clarity. And it's crazy how just being fit and healthy, what it does to the mind. So that physical transformation being one thing, but the mind, waking up in the morning not tired, not groggy, not having cloudy judgment, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just had an impact on every level. Being able to turn up and every day and just deliver.
I can fully relate to that. I can understand it, because I feel like I've been on a similar journey. Many people I speak to that have gone through a transformation like this, they say they feel better than when they did in their 20s. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the 20s were like 20s are always a crazy time. I don't know about you, but 20s you're just about an adult, but you're not, because you're a kid. Especially as dentists, we're studying well into our sort of mid-20s. I had a slightly longer journey there. So I only graduated when I was 25. So until I was 25, I was still studying. Then you come into sort of ownership and all the not ownership, sorry, working as a dentist and working life. But the 20s are a weird time. But I definitely feel this is the best I've felt.
Yeah. I'm pleased to hear that.
From what I can remember.
If that's anything to be inspired by, then I'm very happy.
I met your personal trainer.
Yeah. He went
to speak very highly of you.
Yeah. I've had a few, and it's like you grow with the trainer as well, and you might outgrow them. It's time for a change. So it's a journey. It's just staying consistent.
One thing I actually did, and I'll just touch upon it now quickly. I did a 48-hour fast over the weekend just now. First time I fasted.
48 hours.
48 hours. So I came into this new year, and we had a trip. We went away just before Christmas. Came back, had Christmas, so obviously a little bit more eating and not really sticking to the diet plan as much. I came into the new year just feeling a little bit like heavy, not from a weight point of view, but you just feel like you're not quite switched on. And I've been listening and reading a lot about sort of intermittent fasting or like just doing a body cleanse and all this sort of stuff. So what was it? Friday night, I had dinner at 7 p.m. and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, but I just don't feel right. As I need to do something. I was like, okay, let me try this fasting thing. So I did 24 hours up to Saturday. That was my plan. Initially, just do a 24-hour sort of cleanse, detox. First 12 hours were difficult. So I got to about Saturday lunchtime. I was like, I'm starving. I need to eat. First time I fasted. Never fasted before. Pushed myself through. I was having some electrolytes. I'm managing it. Got to Saturday night. I was like, I'm going to break the fast. Got to dinner time. I was like, actually, you know what? I feel quite good now in the sense that I had more energy than I had compared to the morning. I was like, let's see it through. Carried it forward into Sunday. Sunday morning, I've never woken up with that much energy. Even
Wow.
everything I've been speaking about in the last 18 months, that transformation, and that was about 36 hours into the fast, I just wake up with this boundless amount of energy. And it's so powerful what sometimes just having a little cleanse, a detox does to your body, it repairs itself. And I had incredible sleep that Saturday night. So something, I mean, that's not medical advice or anything like that. Anyone has to look at it each of their own, but something I'm probably going to look into, not from a weight management point of view, but just from a
You love
incapacity.
optimizing all parts of life.
I think so. Look, you get 24 hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
And you have to try and make them as efficient as possible. And sometimes, you get to the end of the day and be like, "Oh, what did I achieve?" And sometimes you're a bit disappointed because you didn't manage to tick off some of the boxes. But I think the more productive you can be in as many areas of your life, I think it's great. Whether it's just even spending more time with the kids and family and taking them to clubs and whatever it is. But I think the more productive or more meaningful you can make your day, you just feel better for it.
This leads on nicely. There's one area I've not spoken to you about yet, and it's something that's really important to me: fatherhood and being a parent. And you've got kids. So, what hasn't perhaps worked so well with having such a, such a growing business? What areas are you further optimizing?
Yeah, I think there's always that balance. You've got, I call my business, it's my first baby. It's there, it was there. Actually, it was my second baby because Ishan was born just 6 months before. So Ishan was born February 20 and then took over the practice in September. So
With a
three
new
babies almost within 6 months of each other. So it's always a hard balance, trying to be switched on, focused with the business and making sure, you're not missing things there, but also spending enough time, quality time with the family, with the kids and being present. Um, I'm going through phases where sometimes I struggle and I'd love to give more time, but I think I'm at a point now where I feel like I give enough to the kids and the family. They're growing up. I make enough time, on a Wednesday, I always take Ishan to football, so I make sure, I finish with patients early. My whole team know it. Everyone knows it. Look, that's
a non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Weekends as well. Like, there's always times if you ask my kids and if you ask Ishan, he'll be like, he's always doing emails, he's always on his phone, really thing. But the nature of kids, they want your attention. When they're there, they want your attention. And that's maybe one downfall is, sometimes it's good just put the phone away, have that 100% focus. And you try, but sometimes there's things you just have to sort out, and kids don't really understand that, do they? But I think I've got the balance right. We go on nice holidays and everything.
Yeah, you vacation a lot, so I think that's good.
Which is nice, and that's great quality time and undisturbed time. Although there's always something I
Dubai is your favorite place, right?
Dubai is it's one of our favorite destinations. It's just an easy holiday.
It is. There's everything there.
Ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
For the kids, it's easy. So
So, and with your journey, so obviously being a successful practice owner, you must have a lot of people asking you for advice and tips. And I know you spoke to me about, potentially offering mentorship because you've been doing it informally. Tell me more about that. Any plans to grow that?
Yeah, I think naturally as people and as I see other people, and I think it's always important to look out for mentors because I think in every aspect of life, it's really important to have those mentors that can guide you and help you. And I did that at the outset, and I was building a business. Still do that now. I'm always looking to better myself and find ways I can optimize things and make things better. And one thing I noticed over the last maybe last year, 18 months or so, I've had quite a few people in the profession, whether it's newer practice owners or people looking to take that step into practice ownership, just come and ask me for advice, whether it's a quick message on Instagram, or, I might see them at a conference or a course and they're like, "Oh, I've heard about Hampstead Dental Studio and what you've done. And, can you help me with this and that?" So I've helped a few people over the last maybe year, 18 months on an informal basis, building their business, or just, just advice, just talking through things and almost like a soundboard. And then more recently, I've sort of launched this mentorship program. We call it a practice growth mentorship program, where I can really help practice owners, whether it's existing practice owners that are struggling with systems, processes, HR, team. I know where my strengths lie. I know where I can, try and improve things using my own experience. And that's an area that I'm looking to grow. I enjoy it. So I enjoy that whole building a business side of things, whether it's my own or whether it's helping somebody else, because there's nothing better than enjoying your own success or seeing somebody else succeed, especially when you've given your input.
I love that. I feel there's two ways to acquire experience. One is walk on that journey, or buy that from someone who's walked on that journey, which is a way of buying time, really.
Yeah.
So I'm huge for mentorship. I've got mentors in all parts of my life. And I remember once I joined a business coaching program. And when I got there, the people in the room said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "This is exactly why I'm here, because the minute you think that you know all, that's your downfall. There are people better than me, bigger than me, growing faster than me, achieving a lot more." So I think that's a great offer if you're open to it. Any of the listeners could tap into your knowledge and you offer it as a formal coaching thing, mentorship. How flexible is it, or have you made a curriculum?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of options, and if anyone's interested, they can get in touch and we can go into it in a bit more detail. A lot of it depends if that person is ready, to be in that position. Sometimes it might just be an informal chat where I can just give them some advice, and they can come back to me when the time is right. Because this type of mentorship program, it's not for everyone. You got to be in that mindset where you want to grow, you want to take your practice to a certain level, or if you're just at that point before establishing, you want to be, from day one hitting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have that aspiration. So it starts off with a bit of a deep dive call, and we have a Zoom chat for around 45 minutes to an hour, just to get a bit more information about what the practice is doing, where they want to be, and if it's a right fit for both of us, then there's a couple of options that we could look at in terms of working together.
So if an associate calls you and says, "Khilan, I'm looking to buy a practice, I want your help." If at any point you feel practice ownership isn't for them, would you be open enough to tell them at the risk of maybe offending them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done this recently. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago who reached out to me. I think it was over Instagram, or they got my contact through somebody, and exactly that. They had built quite a big following on Instagram, very on social media, look like a very successful dentist,
Yeah.
doing good dentistry, or at least Instagram dentistry anyway. We can talk about that another time. But yeah, really came to me with that question. Look, I'm ready for the next step, and I was like, okay, what's the next step? It was like practice ownership. It was almost like it was a given,
Yeah.
like it's a path. And I sat down with that person, and I said, that is really where you want to go. And I think a lot of people, a lot of dentists, especially the younger dentists, they almost blindly see it as a progression path.
Yeah.
And I don't think it needs to be like that, because one thing, if you're a good clinician, being a good business owner doesn't directly correlate. And they're two very, very different things. Nobody teaches you how to be a business owner, a boss. You wear so many different hats every single day. Dentistry is one thing, that's hard enough to be able to then do that as well as all the other responsibilities that practice ownership brings. I don't think people realize how grave of a responsibility it is, and
Yeah.
what it can end up doing. And I've quite sadly, I've seen some dentists go into it who are very, very successful dentists, and they've gone into practice ownership. One, the dentistry has scaled down, and they're probably not doing as much dentistry and not enjoying it as much. At the same time, they haven't had the skills to be able to develop as a business owner. So I think it's very bespoke, it's very case by case.
Yeah.
There's merit for obviously owning a practice, and if it's for the right reasons, it's great. And I don't regret anything in terms of practice ownership and where I am now, but I don't think it's for everyone. And that's step one. I think just realizing, are you at the right step? Are you at the right stage of being a practice owner and
Yeah.
going from there?
I love that. And I love what you said that it doesn't necessarily mean next step is to own a practice. I know some associates that frequently talk out of buying a practice because I look at their life, what they've told me, what they earn, and they are better off
Yeah.
doing what they're doing. Some of them have families. So sometimes owning a practice isn't the right move, especially with the uncertainty it comes with.
Definitely. I mean, there's times I come back from the practice. I think, "Oh, I wish I was an associate." I look at my associates like that. I live the life. You clock in.
I used to feel like that with my team. Yeah.
Yeah, like you come in 8:30, leave at 5:30. Don't need to worry about anything else. You know, patients are booked in.
Yeah.
Especially where we are, the processes, the workflow,
Yeah.
the systems, the patient journey. It's all there. It's such a nice environment to work in.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me think twice. If there was a practice at Hampstead Dental Studio 5 years ago, I would have been, oh, you know what, might as well become an associate there as opposed to do my own thing. But that's the reason why I did it. I wanted
Yeah.
to set this up. So yeah, I always say there's grass is always greener.
Yeah.
There's always this debate, associate versus principal, and everyone will sit on one side of the fence depending on where you are. But I think definitely if you look at it from an income point of view, if you're looking from a time point of view, there's a lot of pros nowadays of being an associate. I think very much the ball's in the court of the associate, especially in the right kind of practice, right type of environment. You just got to weigh up
Yeah.
where you want to be and where you see yourself going as well.
Khilan, you've always had this really calm demeanor about you, and I just can't picture you getting stressed. But what's the truth of it? You come across super calm and relaxed. Are you?
So a lot of people say this, but like you're always quite calm and collected, and a lot of it is you have to put on a face as a practice owner, as a principal, as people depend on me, right? So especially my staff and my team, even patients, they depend on you. They see you as somebody who's steady, and a lot of it doesn't matter what's going on internally. You just have to put that steady face on, because the moment you start becoming nervous, anxious, and thinking, oh god, I'm so stressed, it projects. It's contagious, and everyone else slowly around you starts becoming like that as well. So I think I might come across calm and everything's cool, but internally at times there's a lot that's going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's going on, especially last year. I think I felt more the stresses of business and practice ownership, whether it's economical climate at the moment. And there's a lot of things going on at the moment, right? Um, so, but I think you just got to learn how to manage that stress. And there are ways you can really manage it. I think part of we spoke earlier about the transformation and the physical transformation I went through. I think that came coincidentally at a time where maybe things were more stressful, but I managed to deal with those stresses better just because I was in a better shape, or mentally I had a bit more clarity. So a lot of things go hand in hand, but it's tough. I mean, nobody realizes, and this is you speak to other dental practice owners, and we're kind of a little, I don't know, clique, because nobody outside dentistry or dental business understands what owning a dental practice is like, whether it's one, whether it's two, three, whatever scale you're at. And even talking to family and friends, they see, okay, you're a dentist, and clinically I work 3, maybe 4 days a week. It's funny. I don't get annoyed, but whenever I speak to my mom, she'll be like, "Is it your day off today?" Because she always associates when I'm not seeing patients, that's my day off.
Oh, right.
I was like, "Mom, there's no such thing as a day off, right?" And that's the reality of it. It never stops. And actually, for me, my day off is actually seeing my patients. So the day I'm in clinic all day, that's actually a day off, because I zone out. I'm doing what I enjoy and love.
Just you're flying. Yeah.
That I'm in my zone. Flow. Everything else around that, I enjoy the business side of things, but it does come with its stresses. And I try not to let it show. There are times, I probably, I'm human, and it will show. And at home, sometimes you ask my wife, maybe I'll come home from a stressful day, and that's almost like the release, and she'll be like, "You've had a stressful day today." But there's times and places where you have to just keep it in and rein it in.
I think that's part of being a leader that's trying to steer the ship. Imagine we're on a flight and the pilot is like, oh, it would make everyone nervous. I would love for your kids perhaps in 10 or 20 years to watch this podcast and be like, man, my dad was cool. Yeah, I would love for that to happen. Look, I think we're nearly at time, but what I love asking my guests is, what is success for you now? What does success mean to you today?
Success for me today is, I think where I am now, look, I've got a family. And if you look at it on paper, got a family, 2 lovely kids, lovely wife, lovely home set up, a great business, a good team. And I say, look, that's successful, and most people look at that as, you've done really well. The thing is, the type of person I am, there's always something more, and I always want to look at the next thing. So internally, I'll never think I'm successful, and all the kind words you said earlier, it kind of makes me blush, and not kind of feel I deserve.
You just don't
those
believe it,
words. I
right?
don't believe it. Sometimes you have to pinch yourself and be like, "Look, I am where I am now, and it's great." But it's a balance of being humble and appreciating what you've got, and it is great, and not complaining. That's important. But I think if you've got the mindset that you want to do something else, or you can do something bigger, I think that's what gets me up every day. And I think maybe that's a bit of definition of success, of waking up every morning with that hunger, with that drive to do something different, to do something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
And nothing you said mentioned money really to me there. So it's about becoming better, doing more.
Becoming better. I mean, money comes, and of course,
Yeah.
let's not be around the bush. Money is important. That's how we live our lives and lifestyle, and be able to provide for our kids, and that's really, really important. But I think greater than that is feelings, human connection. How you wake up, and what you're going to be doing for the day, what you can do for other people, and the impact you can make on other people.
Yeah.
I think we're in quite a privileged position. Being a dentist, and we come across so many people on a day-to-day basis, and the impact we can have
Absolutely.
is great. And on the higher level, if you're a practice owner, if you're a business leader, the impact you can have on that level, it's profound. So I think
Just even you here today, taking time, because you saw patients today, you zipped over here. That's really what you're doing today.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
This is my ideal day. If I
Yeah.
can, just try to be as impactful wherever I can. Straight from here, I'm going to go home, pick up my son, take him to football. So that's like tick.
I love that.
It's great.
Khilan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
I
Shaz.
wish you even more success, and maybe we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
you. Thanks for listening to Successful, Depth, Not Display. If today's conversation inspired you, please do subscribe and share with like-minded people. You can discover more about our guests on successful.dental. I'm Shaz Memon, and I'm passionate about helping practices rank organically on Google to attract high-intent patients. At Digimax, we use 20 years of proven SEO strategy rooted in patient psychology to make that happen. We're also known for our patient conversion machine websites, not just beautiful, but engineered to turn more visitors into patients, using everything we've learned over 2 decades. I'd also love to introduce you to Dental Bio. With Dental Bio, you can build your personal brand by sharing where you work, write blogs and articles, showcase your reviews, add links, your transformations, and more. Everything you need to build your personal LinkedIn Bio website all in one place. Get started for free. Just visit dental.bio. And if you'd like to support my charity powered by the incredible UK dental community, visit wellsonwheels.co.uk or search No Water Land on Prime Video or Apple TV to watch the documentary. I'm Shaz Memon. Until next time, remember, success isn't just a result, it's a feeling. It's fulfillment, contribution, growth, connection, and being true to yourself. Real success is lived from the inside out. For me, it's about depth, not display. Thank you.